Welcome to the Running is Life podcast. I'm Coach Aaron Saft, and today I have with me my guests that finished the B.R.U.T.E.S challenge this year. And if you don't know what the B.R.U.T.E S challenge is, stay tuned. We're going to get a deep dive into it and talk about it. It's just to give you a brief synopsis, it's 5 different courses over the over 365 days that you have to complete. The courses are here in the southeast. And it's a really, really tough courses. They're all 100K or longer. But Cera Jones, Josh Nunez, and Nick Schuster, they all are on the podcast to talk about it. And they all finished this year. Some pretty incredible stories here. And I appreciate Cera for connecting all 3 of us. Really enjoyed hearing their stories. This conversation probably could have went on for another 2 hours to hear about each course and their stories. But man, I want to be respectful of their time as well. So, but I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Cera Jones, Josh Nunez, and Nick Schuster. And I'll talk to you at the end. All right. I've got 3 B.R.U.T.E challenge finishers with us. We're going to get into what the B.R.U.T E challenge is and what it entails, but I want to first get to know each of our guests, and we'll start with ladies first. So, Cera, would you introduce yourself and where you're from and your background into life and sport, please?
I am Cera Jones. I currently live in Athens, Georgia, but I'm from Ohio. And I didn't start running until 2014, so that was my early 30s. So very late to the game. And then my buddy that I did a couch to 5K with was really into trail running, so he introduced me into trails, and then ultras came after that. So that's
right on. You've had a good progression, and Cera's been on the show before, so I will link that into the show notes. If you're curious about her and her adventure, that was with the Fierce Dragon, right?
Yeah, Crew and Celia.
Yeah, Crew and Celia. Very cool. I'm just going to move around the horn here. Josh, why don't you go next?
Okay. So I'm in Atlanta now. I grew up as a military brat, so all over the place. And I got started with running, doing PT training with my dad when I was in middle school back in the 80s, and ran cross country in high school. Graduated from college and took a few years off there, gained a bunch of weight, finally got back into it. And as I started getting back into running, that's when Born to Run came out. Drank the Kool-Aid. Like, I got to do ultras, got to move into sandals and barefoot running. And so I did my first 50 miler in 2012, and been in sandals since 2013. And around 2015, I started doing just a lot of backpacking. Not a lot of running, but in 2021, my 50th birthday was coming up, and I was like, if I'm ever going to do 100, I better start getting back into this ultra stuff again. And so I spent all of 2022 training for Cruel Jewel 100, and that's when I started looking at B.R.U.T.E S too. So that's kind of my background.
Right on. And Cera's finished 100 before. She's finished Hellbender. So both of you have 100 experiences. Nick, how about yourself?
Good day. Thanks for having me on the show. This is pretty exciting. My first podcast, so I'm going to totally butcher this whole thing. I guess my story is kind of similar to Cera and Josh in the sense that I kind of started running like around 2011, 12 area, like kind of in that time frame. Like Josh, I had a friend of mine. I was running long distances because I wasn't fast. And so I just kept running. And that was kind of fun. And I had a friend of mine one day. We were sitting down having a drink. And he was like, have you read that book, Ultra Marathon Man? And I'm sure y'all have heard that book.
Yeah, Dean Karnazes, yep.
And yeah, so I read the book, and I was hooked on the whole Western States thing, and I signed up for one of my first trail runs down at Pine Mountain, which was Dean Karnazes. I wanted to meet him. Mm-hmm. I met him. He gave me a free race entry into Pine Mountain Trail Race, and I was kind of hooked after that. So, and it's weird too. Like I kind of got pulled into it. So I would sign up for something, and then another opportunity would present itself and it would pull me into it. And then I'd sign up for the next thing, and it would pull me into the next race. So I didn't really know what I was doing. And it was kind of cool. It kind of turned into this really neat adventure where I've kind of traveled all over the world running and doing crazy stuff. And it's kind of put me at this with this group, which is awesome. And like I said, I'm just kind of happy just to be here. So thanks for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you get to run Western States?
No, I'm in my 10th year of trying to get into that damn race. And if I don't get into it, y'all, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm just going to go out there and run it myself. I don't know what I'm going to create like a B.R.U.T.E.S Western or something.
Like a soft rock, like they do for hard rock.
Yeah, like I'm just going to like be the rebel that just goes out there and just makes it happen. So we'll see.
Right on. Well, here's fingers crossed for you, man. It's a cool experience. So I hope you get to get in this year.
Thank you.
Absolutely. All right. So the B.R.U.T.E.S challenge. Let's talk about first, what is B.R.U.T.E.S? Who wants to field that one? Josh, you want to field what is B.R.U.T.E.S?
Sure, I can field that. The B.R.U.T.E.S challenge is these 5 kind of epic and iconic runs in the Southeast United States. They don't really have races associated with those trails. I'm not sure if that's a coordination thing or what, but and I would say they're all just as challenging as a 100-miler. They got a lot of vert on all those runs. It's really a really cool experience, cool trails to go see.
Right on. And Sarah, what does B.R.U.T.E.S stand for?
Blue Ridge Ultra Trail Endurance Series. Is that right?
Endurance, something.
Yeah, I think it's endurance
Slam. Okay.
Slam. Oh yeah, that would make
Very good. You did good, kid. You did good. And so Nick, what about what courses are these? Which 5 are we talking about?
Okay, so I'm just going to do it in kind of the order I'm thinking. First up is you've got the Georgia Loop, which is a 59-mile, feels like 89-mile loop. Kind of follows the Georgia Death Race route. So you get some DRT, you get some of that. Then you go up to Pitchell. Some of you, I'm sure we'll get into like what these actually mean, but you've got Pitchell, which is Mount Pisgah up to Mount Mitchell. You've got Scar, which is a Smoky Mountain kind of adventure training run or trail run that runs from Davenport to I'm running off the top of my head here, so I apologize, to Fontana. Then we've got Masson. It's Massanutten or Massanutten. I've heard both, but I think everyone pronounces it Massanutten. And if I made a mistake to anybody in that area, I apologize, because I know what it's like when things get mispronounced. But Massanutten, they call that the Ring. And then you've got the Foothills Trail up in northern South Carolina. So that's kind of the at least that's the trails.
Right on. And what's the requirement? Like, what's the timeline look like? How long do you have to do this?
Okay, so the way we read it from, I guess we should pay a little bit of credit to Charles Raffensperger. This is his baby, right? So if anyone's interested in even what we're talking about, there's a website out there. It's the B.R.U.T.E.S Slam. I think you could just Google B.R.U.T.E.S.
Yeah, I'll put it in the show notes. Yep.
Yeah, thank you. So there's that. And Charles Raffensperger, I'm sure he'd probably be another host for another day, kind of a thing where he's been on. Yeah. Oh, he has? Okay, so there you go. Maybe reference that show note. So this is Charles' baby, and he kind of devised this, and it kind of outlines kind of the whole format. So you have technically as much time as kind of you need, as long as you complete it. I think there's like an unofficial 30-hour cutoff in there, but really I think the intent was just
Sarah.
It says official 32, but if you keep moving and don't stop, you can finish later than that and it'll still count. So as long as you don't like take a long break, you can go over.
It's a cool format because it's way laid back. I mean, you can kind of tell like it's not designed for speed. That's cool too, but this is definitely a little bit different of a format. So people like me can finish.
And you have, did we say how long you have to do it?
Sarah said 32, but
No,
I
sorry,
thought
the whole challenge. So completing all
one
5
year.
courses. Yeah, right. That's what I was getting at. I'm sorry.
Right, but it can go across calendar years. It's a 365 days
365 days. Yeah.
Yes.
Right. I mean,
Right.
there's a few, two, maybe three of us that have done it in a calendar year, but it's no problem doing it across. Like if you wanted to start in fall and winter and go into the next year.
Right. Yeah. My
Yeah, I think
listeners
that's
will
what all
remember
of us.
I tried to go after it last year, and Scar was my first run, and we got 2 feet of snow. So that put the kibosh on it. And then my next one was supposed to be Massanutten, and we were supposed to be driving north to New York, and we ended up flying. So there went my second one. So the whole Brutes challenge just went out the window.
I think that kind of touches on something I'm sure we'll get into, but like it really is about like the conditions and the weather and being able to have a window and get in there and get these things accomplished. Cause I think that's the biggest factor is the weather and the conditions.
Yeah, absolutely. Something definitely we'll talk about. Um, so let's first go around the horn here again. Sarah, we can start with you. And which order did you do it in? And was there a reason to your madness?
Um, so I did the Georgia Loop first. The main reason, one, it was the closest, but also a buddy of mine was moving to Oklahoma, and he always wanted to do the Georgia Loop before he was gone. So just out of nowhere, I'm like, all right, let's do this. And then that just kicked off my Brutes challenge. And then I went to Foothills, then Scar. I was then gonna do Massanutten with the Virginia Happy Trail Club. I'm sure I'm butchering their acronym. But my cat ended up getting really sick, so I didn't do that. And I ended up just jumping into Pitchell without any planning. And then did Massanutten solo. So, and I was going to do Pitchell with the Adam Hill gang, but
You kind of swapped.
yeah, I just swapped it out. So no real rhyme or reason, more so than it was just kind of location.
Right on. Very good. And Josh?
Yeah, so this is probably going to be a theme, but I started with Georgia Loop too. Again, it's close, right? And then I did Pitchell, Scar, Massanutten, and then Foothills. Actually, between Scar and Massanutten, I actually attempted Foothills. We DNF'd that, and then I had to come back and do Foothills after Massanutten. But so again, Georgia Loop's close. Reasoning around Pitchell and Scar, this is where a lot of that logistics comes in, which is kind of different than a lot of runs you have to deal with. Pitchell and Scar, like the roads close at certain times of year, and you just can't get up there. And so I wanted to do those as early as we could in the season, so if there was an issue, we could come back before the roads closed again in winter. So I wanted to get those knocked out, and then and another anchor of this whole schedule is Massanutten with the ring and the Virginia Happy Trail Runner people that Sarah already mentioned, because they have a great event they put on. It's not a race; it's just a supported event, and they're just a great group out there supporting it. It's a great vibe on that run, and then finish up with Foothills. I kind of feel like Foothills and Georgia Loop you could probably do any time of the year as long as you're willing to rough the cold. But the other ones you kind of need to do them at certain times.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, we can talk about that and why. But we'll finish off with Nick. How about your order?
I mean, so my story is just a little bit different, but also kind of the same. So this took me like 2.5 years, or really 2 years, to kind of figure out how to do it. So my first year, I started out with Foothills, which went great, and then I went to Massanutten, and that didn't go so great. But that kind of became the starting point for year 2 was Labor Day. So once I got to Labor Day, I went out and did Georgia Loop, which was great. And I had done Georgia Loop, and then I had gone to Massanutten. So I had 3 in year 1, and then realized pretty quickly that the weather was going to kind of close in on me. So I missed it getting them all done in that first year. But Massanutten was on Labor Day because the Virginia Happy Trail Runners puts on basically an event at Labor Day. And y'all, I got to completely put in a word for them. That is a really great event. They do a phenomenal job, and they're just a lot of fun to be with. So shout out to them. Anyway, it's great because you got a ton of support at Massanutten, and then that kind of became the year demarcation point for getting the rest of the 5 done. So I went back and we did Pitchell Scar, redid Georgia Loop again, and then we redid Foothills again. So got that done, and that's kind of my story. That's how I had to do it. But yeah, I mean, back to Josh's point, like the weather can shut you down on these attempts. And I know Foothills, Josh, doesn't seem like it's terrible, but there's a ton of stairs on Foothills. So if you have any ice whatsoever, you almost can't attempt Foothills. So knowing that weather pattern and how you want to kind of get in there and get out is kind of critical. Because for year 1 for me, it caused me to have to rerun a couple of these things.
That's incredible that you had to redo it. And Josh saying that you had to go back and do Foothills. Look forward to hearing what happened there, for sure. So I guess we could start there. Josh, why don't you talk about Foothills and what went on there? Just start with describing what is Foothills, how far, all that good stuff, and then what kind of happened.
Yeah. Okay. So Foothills is an end-to-end trail that starts in South Carolina at Table Rock and ends in South Carolina at Coney. Goes north into North Carolina and back down. So that's Foothills Trail. It's 77 miles, so it's the longest trail in the challenge. But it doesn't have the most elevation gain. So that's kind of good. So what happened there? Me, Nick, and another guy, Ted, went out to do Foothills at the end of August, I believe. So as you can imagine, the end of August, it's hot and you're wet all the time and you can't cool down. And so the other guy that we were with, I think he really ended up having some heat exhaustion. And we just were moving really slow through Laurel Valley. And so once we finally got out of Laurel Valley, we had been on our feet for, what was it, like 21 hours by that time, Nick? It was, we'd been on our feet for a long time. And to me, that's like part of the danger of these long runs. Is just like the longer you're on your feet, like the more chance you have of not finishing something. And we were all kind of pretty much done at that point. So came back in October. I'm sorry, what's that?
You were already like dead and tired, and then you have to get into Gorges State Park.
Right. Yeah.
There's no way out of that without going through. That would have been rough.
Yeah. So, so that's what happened there. But came back in much better run.
Good. And Nick, when you were doing that with Josh, was that your first Foothills or your second Foothills?
That was my second. So I got to Foothills 2.5 times, 2 3/4 times, which was really fun. Lots of fun. But yeah, I mean, Josh has a really good point. Like that turned into an evac situation at that point. Like just the heat and then being out there, and there was a little bit of fear. I won't lie about getting everyone out safe. You get out on some of these trails and you're alone and you're all by yourself and you're way out there. Like your phone doesn't work. I mean, there's that element where you don't, like in a traditional race, you've got that aid a couple miles up the road. You've got people out there with you. And then in some of these instances, it's just you, and you might be fighting hypothermia. You might be fighting heat exhaustion. And you have to know how to deal with those challenges when they pop up, and how to safely kind of get yourself extracted from that situation. I'll tell you, Josh and I, and I'm sure Sarah is the same. You can't quit when you start these types of adventures. I mean, you have to be very kind of dialed in and have a really good attitude and know you're going to run into some pretty bad stuff. But you've also got to be pretty strong to know how to get out of there and know when to say, you know what, today's not a good day. We need to get out of here. And I think that was one of those days. So not an easy lesson to learn, but we're here to talk about it. So that's good.
Yeah. Well, pulling on that thread a little bit further, what did you guys do to ensure you were as safe as possible? What were some of the measures you guys took?
Yeah, I mean, so for us on that foothills situation, I think it was really the guy we were running with that was really having the severe issues, and that was just a matter of us slowing down and taking care of him. So it's like every time we came by water, hey, do we need to stop? Let's cool you down a little bit. Hey, here's a bench. Let's rest. So that's what we did. And to Nick's point about being out there, one thing that I found interesting about foothills especially is in the summer months when we were out there in August, we didn't see anybody on trail in the Laurel Valley section at all. But I know when I did it in October, I saw people like every 30, 40 minutes in the Laurel. So it's like, so just kind of knowing that time of year and if people are going to be out there that could help you out, possibly call or whatever too. Sure. It's something to know. But it was interesting. But yeah, really just taking, you just have to slow down. We had enough food. Foothills is great as far as water sources. We knew we weren't going to run out of water. So we were able to, cool our buddy down, keep him moving, but we just couldn't move fast enough to actually have a completed effort that day.
Right on. Did you have something, Nick?
Well, I was just going to add to that. Like, I think from a medical perspective, you're out there, you don't want to have a lot of weight, but there's certain things you got to make sure that you have. You can't disrespect Mother Nature. We basically learned you need to have a space blanket no matter what time of year you're out there. Mm-hmm. You got to have a space blanket in case you get cold. That's really hard to get warmed back up. And then you've got to be able to look for the signs for heat exhaustion when you're out there by yourself too. And so you develop a small like crash kit of medical gear in your pack. And I think that's probably one of the biggest lessons I got to take away from all this is kind of like absolutely what's some of the gear you've got to make sure that you have. So I'm sure Sarah's got like some stories about that too. It's just that when you're out there by yourself, you just got to be careful.
Yeah. Yeah. When I was, it had snowed and I didn't know how bad it was up high on Scar. And I had actually started and I got to the first shelter. I left from Fontana. Took me obviously a lot longer than anticipated because I was going through a ton of snow. Not knowing that Newfound Gap had closed, we couldn't find that information because this was an unexpected snowstorm. And then the guy that was going to meet me at Newfound pinged me on my Garmin, my InReach, and said, "Hey, Newfound's closed. We got to rethink this." And thank God for that InReach, because I wouldn't have got the message any other way. There was no cell phone service. So, I just said, "Okay, man, I'm turning around, come back to Fontana and pick me up." So, but, without that kind of device, gosh, I wouldn't have had no way to communicate with anybody. So just making sure that you have the capability to have some kind of tracking or communication, especially in these situations. Like you said, there's really not much cell phone service in many places. So taking that into consideration, making sure that you have a safe means to communicate or be tracked. Yeah. Sarah, did you bring an InReach with you?
No, I was, for Foothills and Pitchell, I had crew, and then I was with a friend at Georgia Loop. Scar, I had you and Sibley on call if I needed. But I did that completely unsupported. I didn't have an InReach or anything. Massanutten, I tried to get an InReach, but it was in use, so I just said, screw it. Gotta get done. So I just went for it. I'm like, just don't crack your head open.
Yes. Well, Natalie Daniel, who's also a finisher, and that's who I had on the podcast with Charles. Natalie did fall and had a head injury at Massanutten. And she, thankfully her husband was nearby, but she had to sit tight for a little while to make sure that it wasn't more concussive or anything like that. So she did run into an incident. Thankfully was okay. She had cut her scalp basically, and most likely had a concussion, but she was able to manage to just sit still for a while, let everything kind of pass, and then move on. But the circumstances do arrive, especially in the dark. Like if you go into the dark, there's just so many external factors that can really happen. So and Josh and Nick, did you guys carry a satellite device? Nick shaking his head yes.
Yeah, I don't have one yet, but Nick has one. I use the Garmin app on the phone for tracking. So when I have the intermittent cell signal, like it'll update and let my support crew know. But to your point, that might be hours. Before I pick that up.
I got the inReach about halfway through the challenge. Just so my wife could, I think my wife was out at Georgia Loop, and she was also at SCAR. So it just helped her triangulate where I was at. And then if I did get in trouble, it was just nice to know people knew how to track me. So
absolutely. It is a peace of mind.
Yeah.
And what a number, and Sarah, you're obviously included in this, is a lot of my runners, if they are looking at, they'll say, hey, does anybody have an inReach? I've mailed my inReach to whoever needs it to use. So I mean, just ask people if they have one that you could borrow, because it's easy enough to change your emergency contacts in there or whatever messages you want to pre-program. It's super simple, and like I probably have, if you guys know Michael Patton, I probably still have his messages in my phone from when he just did the Virginia AT. But like I said, it's a peace of mind. Your significant others, they can track you, and it's constant. You can let it ping as much as you want. You can change the frequency of the ping. So and it obviously it doesn't have to be a Garmin inReach. There's so many devices out there now, but just that safety and peace of mind. I know, did we get to everybody? We got to everybody on the foothills. Sarah, did we touched on yours? Okay.
Yeah, I mean that was by far my favorite.
Was foothills?
Yeah.
And why was that?
I'm a sucker for waterfalls, so from Table Rock all the way through Laurel Valley, and then on the other side of Gorges was just waterfalls and rivers and scenic views, and so
nice.
I'd say Georgia Loop is a second, but
yeah, there's a bias there. I'm not taking that. Just no. Just kidding. just kidding. How about you two? Do you guys have the foothills? Was that one of your favorites, or was it another?
Let Nick take this first.
Well, I was gonna say, I mean, I'm with Sarah. Foothills. If I had to recommend one of these trails to anybody listening to this show, totally go around Foothills. It's awesome. It's got great. It's just a nice winding trail with beautiful views of like waterfalls. You have a ton of covered bridges. There's some steps. There's a lot of steps, but it's just it doesn't get monotonous. It feels like you're constantly just kind of running through the woods and kind of rolling with it. It's just a really pleasant trail. They've done an amazing job with Foothills, and so that if I had to recommend one to anybody, Foothills is just it's a joy. It's long, but it's worth it.
Cool.
They covered up the leap of faith on that one. There's one section you come to, I think it's after Gorges State Park, but there's stairs leading up to the top of this giant boulder, and then there's just a wire that leads over to another boulder, but you have to step over it, which I mean it's only probably like 1.5 feet away, but I can't imagine doing that in the dark or being like really tired. But they ended up putting in a bridge this summer, so no more leap of faith.
Nick had a bonus question. He says, how many bridges on the Foothills Trail? Was it A, 40, B, 80, C, 120, or D, 160? So again, 40, 80, 120, or 160. What say you,
I
Sarah?
saw it. I was gonna Google it, but I'm like, no, I think there's 160.
All
There's
right.
a lot.
Okay, Nick.
I know the answer, and
Okay.
Josh is the one that actually counted, because when he went out, I crewed him, and I told him when he left, count the dang bridges. I want to know how many bridges there are. That was like his way of being distracted.
Okay.
So, Josh, what's the answer?
Well, it's funny you said that because you put that question on the sheet here, and I was like, wait a second, I don't remember anymore. I think it's 120.
It was.
Okay.
You told me it was 122.
Yeah, 122. That sounds right.
So 120. Okay.
So,
There's our bonus
Aaron,
question.
you can officially put in your show notes as the official record of bridges on the Foothills Trail that now reference that, because I don't think it's on the internet.
Gotcha.
I think on the Foothills Trail website it is.
Okay.
We can
There's some
look at
research.
that. Yeah, we
Yeah,
can
that was a great little thing to do with Nick Crew and me on that one. Is like every time I saw Nick, I knew I had to give him the update on the bridge count.
And Josh, how about you? What was your favorite foothills as well, or was it another?
I always just come back to Georgia Loop. I don't know what it is about Georgia Loop. I know it's not like the prettiest, it's not the longest. It's probably just because it's the hometown trail. I've backpacked that a couple of times. I've run it a couple of times now. I just love that area up there along BMT and Duncan Ridge. I know, and Duncan Ridge in the winter, like it's all the leaves down. It's just so cool. I don't know. I
Yeah.
really like Georgia Loop.
Nick shook his head no. Sarah already admittedly said it was her second, and I am not a Georgia Loop fan, so y'all stand alone on that one. Yeah, the DRT is not my friend.
I did it in August during H9 weekend. So,
oh my goodness,
here I am. I think I'm so cool. I'm out there running. I'm just like I'm in my mind, I'm like the coolest person on the planet. And then I see like 50 H9 runners that started way after me. They've also run 50 miles, and they're like, "Oh, Georgia Loop, yeah, that's only like 55 miles, man." Like,
oh God,
I just like, cool. Thanks. Need any humble pie to go with that? Appreciate it.
All right. So with that said, and this will kind of guide our discussion going forward. What was your least favorite, Nick?
Oh, first of all, I looked it up. It's Massanutten. I just pulled it up. It's Massanutten.
Massanutten.
Sorry, Massanutten people on the show. Massanutten is my least favorite. Those rocks are legit. And it's only like I'd say 10% of the trail is just where it's demoralizing is the best way to explain it. But I mean, I was crying. I was at a point where I was like physically had tears coming down my face, and I was like, why? Why? It's beautiful. It's nice, but man, yeah, Josh will tell you, I was not a fan of Massanutten at all.
Did you guys do that one together?
No.
Okay. Gotcha. Well, beyond that, Nick, talk about your Massanutten experience.
Well, I mean, it's just well, first of all, they call it the Ring. The year I did it with the Virginia Happy Trail Runners Club. Amazing people. Incredible. Yep. I had a really awesome guy help me. And he kind of helped me get through the course and keep my spirits up. But it's beautiful overlooks. It's kind of up there outside of DC, Washington, DC, not too far from that area. Really cool trip. But you run 70 miles or 69 miles and you've got like 3 miles left to go. You look down at your watch and you're like, oh, this is easy. Like, let's roll. And it's all downhill. And y'all, it's like gravestones. Like this, imagine like a gravestone in your mind. And you've got the sharp edges. And then what I want you to do is imagine millions of them. And it's like somebody just took them and just threw them down this mountain. And each single gravestone or headstone, it's wobbly. And it's at like a 45-degree angle. And so your shoes are ripping, your ligaments are tearing, everything hurts. You've got 69 miles on your feet, and then you're asked to go downhill 3 miles, which doesn't sound bad until you realize it takes you about 3 hours to go 3 miles. And
Right.
you get to the bottom and you're like, I'm done with this forever. So I think when I did it, I did it. We had I think we had just under 60 people start, and we had I think 17 finish. And I think I was like number 15 or 16. I was just trying to finish.
Yeah.
Josh, I think you had the same with the amount of finishers with your group.
Yeah. Yeah, it was exactly. It was, I think they let in 60 a year. So there was this, it was the full crew, 60 people, and 17 of us finished. Yeah, it was crazy.
Right on. And Josh, what was your least favorite?
Yeah, mass and nothing for sure.
Okay.
Scar is kind of like a close second on that, just because we were just hurting towards the Scar, but it wasn't like I was hurting at the end of mass and nothing, and then what Nick just described, and Nick always describes it as the last 3 miles, but I really feel like it was almost the whole second half. Like you start
Northern Ridge.
Yeah, the Northern Ridge, and you get to start the Northern Ridge experience by climbing up what they call waterfall, which is probably twice as horrible as Blue Hell at Chiaha. It's just like straight up, 2 steps forward, 1 step sliding back for 1.5 miles to get up to the Northern Ridge. And then you get up there and you're like, oh, finally it's flat and downhill. And then it's just like rocks. And the way I describe it is Virginia has all its knives out on that part. And it was the first time in 10 years of running in sandals that I questioned my footwear choice. So
that's fair.
Yeah, I can't imagine. My feet were killing me by the end of Massanutten. And I was in Lone Peaks.
What's total distance on Massanutten?
77. I'm sorry, 72, right? Or
72.
You know what? Their sticker says 71, but I'm pretty sure I had 72 on my watch. But
okay. And elevation gain approximately 16, 14?
I got to defer to Sarah on it. All of my elevations, I have a Koros, which is a great device, but all of my elevations have posted. There's no way it's right, because I only have 13,000 feet for the ring, and I don't think that's right. Sarah, what did you have on the ring?
I had less than you guys, because I was
really,
yeah, and I was like, I don't understand, because I even did some extra out and backs just to get water, and I'm like, I don't know
thought you
how
were
I
going to say just to get extra miles.
No, I ran out of water. Yeah, there was one point where it was like 62 miles in and I'm out of water. No, I was 52 miles in, out of water. And there's a sign, it's like a half mile down. And I knew that there was potentially a river down there. And so it was like a half mile straight down to just like this mud hole, which I didn't end up filling up in. And then I had to climb back up, and I was just hating
So
life.
that's badass, because there is no water on the ring. There's no water out there.
Gotcha.
There's 2 spots I've found even in the drought, and I think I could have, if that 3rd spot, if Virginia wasn't in a drought, would have been good. But yeah, it was glorious coming onto that Forest Service road, and there's just like this pipe coming out of the side of the mountain of this fresh spring. It's just nice. It's glorious. That was I think that was like 62 miles in, 64.
And was that your least favorite as well, or did you have another one, Sarah?
No, I mean, I knew going into Massanutten it was going to be the hardest for me, just from my experience with Grindstone. But I would say, I think it was Pitchell. Pitchell was just overall like a mentally tough one for me. And then I think the ending really, I guess from Rattlesnake Lodge to the finish was
that's a humdinger. Yeah.
So, yeah. I think maybe another year or time I would switch them up, but yeah, I think I'm gonna go with Pitchell.
Okay, all right. Well, we've kind of expounded. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Josh.
I was just going to let you know I did look up the elevation that I had on my watch for Massanutten, and it was right at 13.8.
Okay. All right. So we got somewhere around 14,000.
Yeah.
Right on. But any other stories on Massanutten?
I've
I
really
had a hard time starting. Like I wish that I had paid more attention. But I got there late. It was already dark and I just slept in my car at the trailhead. And then, I'm trying to start at 4:30 in the morning. And so I'm out in the dark trying to follow the signs. And then as soon as you cross this bridge, like on the map, it shows it goes left, but I don't see any blazes that go left. And so like I'm running around in circles. I even like stopped my watch, went back to the start, and then restarted my watch. And then still it took me 12 minutes to figure out that because there's a blue blaze that shows you turn left, but there's no orange blaze. And then, but if you get to the middle of the field, then there's an orange blaze. But then at the wood line, there's a blue blaze going into the woods, but then there's no orange blaze until you actually decide to go down that trail, and then you see the orange blaze like farther in the woods. So, but once you get out on the trail, it's good. But yeah, and then
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say I came across it was probably my most traumatic run, because like 60 some miles in the pitch black dark, I was running down this trail and I turn and there's like this juvenile possum in the middle of the road, like with its guts hanging out.
Oh.
And I'm like, oh man, that sucks. And then I realized it's still alive. And I was just like, hell. So I ran away as fast as possible. But yeah, I'm still traumatized by that. Like, I hope whatever like attacked it is gonna finish it off soon. But yeah.
Gotcha. Not to change topics, but I'm gonna change topics.
Yeah.
So as far as navigating goes, we talked about communication and tracking, but so far as navigating goes, did you all use anything on your phone, on your watch? How did you guys go about that, or did you use a paper map? What was your navigation strategies? Sarah, it sounds like you were just following the blazes on Massanutten. Is that right?
I mean, I had it pulled up on my phone too. I think
Okay.
I don't. It was either Josh or Nick. I downloaded your Strava route, and so I was like, well, I'm supposed to be turning left here, but I don't know. It actually showed that you're supposed to be turning on the other side of the river, according to like the map. But so that's what really confused me.
Gotcha.
Foothills, I had a paper map. I got like that little foothills guide, and so I printed that out. Pitchell was easy enough to just follow the trail. Yeah. Massanutten was great once you got on the trail, like following the orange blazes. There was no question as to where you were going.
Okay.
Georgia Loop, I know the trails, so there's no issue. And then Scar, I had the trail run project uploaded.
Okay.
And
That's pretty straightforward on the AT there.
I don't know. There was two. What are they called? Shelters. I got lost at. The first was like 11. Like it was the second shelter you come to, and like you get to, and there's 5 trails that lead from it. 2 of them are like this loop to the water. One is a trail to where you tie up your bags for food, and then the other one is to the campsite, and then like one of them is the actual trail, but it's not marked in any way. So that was a little confusing. And then when I got to Tri-Corner Shelter, I swear the sign was saying to go straight, and so I went straight into the shelter, and then I ended up at like the porta potties, and the trail just ends, and I'm like, where the hell am I? And I had to backtrack and figured that one out. But yeah, other than those 2 like weird shelter areas, the AT is easy to track.
Campsites are always the worst. Like you come into a campsite or a shelter
Yeah.
area and there's like 20 side trails to campsites. And you're like, wait a second, where am I supposed to be going? On foothills, actually had a guy coming into one of the campsites. It was after dark, and a guy had strung his hammock between two trees across the trail right at the entrance to the
Oh
trail.
my God.
Like,
Uh,
what's going on here?
yeah. Yeah, people do that on the Art Lobe all the time. They string up their guidelines and stuff right across the trail. And if you're going at night, it's just but yeah. How about Josh? Did you use any type of navigating?
So one thing I always do is I always make sure my Strava has the maps downloaded, because I find like if I do get confused, if I can just pull out Strava and like pull up like the record, but don't start recording, it has like all the heat maps on there, and you can kind of pretty easily, and it tells you like where you are in relation to it. There's been plenty of times where I'm like all of a sudden I'm in the middle of the woods and I'm like, okay, this isn't a trail anymore. You look at the Strava and it tells you like where you got off. But just I'll agree with Sarah on this. Like all these trails are pretty well marked. Scar and Pitchell are like so well traveled. The trails are very well defined. Georgia Loop, I just know I've done it way too much. Because there's like one tricky turn in Georgia Loop, but it's really, if you know it, it's not that big of a deal.
Like the Three Forks area?
Over there when you're coming, well, okay, so there's two tricky turns. Three Forks can be tricky for people, that's true. And even less marked is over there on Duncan Ridge coming off of the Coosa backcountry loop. Sometimes people end up going down Coosa backcountry.
Yeah.
But especially for these runs, like I told Nick when we were out running one day, it's like if you ever question which way to go, whichever way is uphill, that's the way to go.
That's fair.
But no, besides that, just looking at the maps beforehand, knowing where you're going. Because yeah, like you're on the AT for Scar, right? Mm-hmm. You're on Mountain to Sea Trail for Pitchell.
Yep.
You're on Massanutten Trail, which is pretty well marked. And then Foothills, of course, Foothills, both times I did that, I got lost in the same place down in Laurel Valley around the campsites. Like I kept, for whatever reason, they got these campsites that's near a Forest Service road, and it's kind of tricky about whether or not you're supposed to stay on the Forest Service or go through the campsites anyway. At least it was for me, but
that's fair.
Yeah, because it keeps going in and off the road. There's like one section where you're just on the trail for like 15 feet and then you're back on like the road, and I'm like, what is the point of this?
Gotcha. And Nick, how about you?
Well, we're about to go into nerd mode. I apologize. Anyone likes spreadsheets? Anyone's a fan of spreadsheets or laying things out? You're gonna like this segment because we're about to get into it. So here's the thing: when I run, I kind of zone out. I know this about myself. I've gotten lost on H9 several times, and when I get out there and I get confused, it takes me about 20 minutes to get kind of back where I need to be, and it can kind of really be debilitating mentally to get kind of back into a run after you lost like 30-40 minutes out there just wandering around. So knowing this about myself, and that's why I do this, I try to get out there so I mentally I can unplug, and so that's the joy, that's the reward of doing it right. Yeah. But knowing that sometimes I just kind of lose track of time and I lose track of where I'm at. So what I did was kind of split this up into a couple of segments. So step one was I did kind of what Sarah and Josh did. I went to Strava and I downloaded a couple of different versions. I know Aaron Bloom had a couple of versions of these. Everyone has kind of a version of like all these different trails. So Strava is a great resource. Obviously, Charles Raffensperger's got some links to people's GPX files, if you will. So I immediately go out, I take a look at these GPX files, and then I kind of ingest those up into Gaia GPS. And I'll take several versions of that Gaia GPS and overlay them and look for just make sure that it's like the good trail that I want. Then once I get that scooped up into Gaia GPS, I then create an overlay route on top of that in segments of like 3 to 4 miles, wherever there's a good aid station. Because the one thing I worry about more than myself is I worry about like my wife out there driving or my friends that may be out there trying to find me. So I want it to be easy for them to be able to navigate to me. That's kind of more important than anything else, because there's nothing worse than being on the crew and support not being able to find your runner. That's like devastating being out there, because then you're just worried all night, and that sucks. So then I take all that data and I basically create GPS points for where I want support, if I want support. And then I create segments based on Gaia GPS. And then I put all that into a PDF so it's clickable. So no matter where anybody is, they can just click on it and get to a location via Google Drive, even if they don't have access to the internet. And then I'll have that Gaia GPS on my phone, and in a pinch, which happened to us, Josh, out at Pitchell, because they had that construction, if you remember.
Oh, that's
when
right.
we crossed over the highway. There was this random construction, and we were like, there's no trail anymore. Like, the trail's gone. So we had to basically pull out Gaia GPS. And it's just nice to have that peace of mind back there to know that you've done the research and you've got a backup plan and you know where the trails are. But I think I had to reference Gaia maybe twice or 3 times on that the entire thing. But knowing that it was back there was really good peace of mind. So I recommend Gaia GPS is a phenomenal tool. Mm-hmm. You can write your own segments in there, and then you can basically spray that data straight out of Gaia GPS up into whatever format you want with Garmin or with Apple Watch or whoever you want to use, Coros. And then you've got that on your wrist to support you throughout the entire event. And there's been a couple times I got off trail and it told me you weren't paying attention. So
yeah. Just having just done Wasatch, that was they have a top 10 list of DNF reasons, and one was getting off course. So another guy and I, he was really worried about it and made me worry about it. So we put it on our watches, and it did come up a few times. There was course markings were missing. We would randomly start running through a meadow. That's actually where the course went, but we're second guessing ourselves. But then our watches were like, no, you're on course. So, it totally is a peace of mind. I mean, so we had it on our phones too.
I didn't mean to cut you off, Aaron. I'm sorry.
You're good.
I was just thinking about something, Josh, because when we were on SCAR, there's a section at some point in SCAR where the AT is only marked like every mile and a half, maybe every 2 miles. Mm-hmm. And so when you start worrying, you're using calories, like you're burning calories the minute you start to worry. So that was another thing that was frustrating. Was it's really nice to be able to pull up that phone, like from that peace of mind perspective, just so you're not burning extra calories out there trying to figure out where you're at. So
yeah, absolutely. We had to do it at Bigfoot too. There was just it was a 6-mile stretch and there was no flagging whatsoever. And we came to a junction and we're all looking around. There's we were a group of 6, 3 pacers, 3 runners, and we had no clue. We're like, there was nothing. And we're just like you were talking about in a campground, and there's multiple avenues, and we're all like, what the heck? So we all pulled up our phones, and then we finally found the line, and we all made it. But it definitely, having that peace of mind, just like, all right, it's here on my phone or on my watch. Yeah, it is, especially, you guys are familiar with the trails and stuff like that, but for folks that aren't, I think it's definitely something to consider, ahead of time when you're planning.
Well, I'd also recommend one more thing too, is make sure you give that plan to somebody that before you go out and do stuff like this, like whether it's a challenge like B.R.U.T.E.S or whether you're just going out and doing foothills on your own. Like, make sure you have a copy of that plan that you can kind of email somebody so they just know where you are, because that can be helpful. Especially if you're doing it solo. Cera was doing a few of these just solo. So yeah, for sure. At least she had me on emergency dial in case she needed something. But a number of questions popping up here. So, obviously you guys spend a lot of time in the night, in the dark. What was your gear choices there? What did you guys use for lighting and such? Cera, you want to start us off?
I always use my Nightcore headlamp, and then I've got the waist belt. And I would say, like, the waist belt is so beneficial for especially these technical trails, just because with the headlamp alone, it makes everything really 2D for me. So having that extra light shine in a different angle, it actually allowed the rocks to stand out a bit more.
And
But
did
yeah.
you use the NU25 on the night core, the really lightweight, small 250 lumen?
No, I've got the really big, heavy one that I
Oh,
need
okay.
to upgrade from, but
Yeah. Gotcha.
it
Gotcha. And
works well.
right on. Which belt were you using?
I think it's just called the light belt. I don't, Celia gave it to me a couple of years ago, and
Okay.
it's been
Yeah.
great.
Right on. Very good. Okay. Josh, how about you?
Yeah, as far as night running, I've always just worn a Petzl headlamp. I think
Mhm.
it's like 400 lumen. My second run was Pitchell, and I did that with Nick. And Nick's got the what Kogalla waist belt that's like 5,000 lumen, and like you can bring an aircraft with or whatever. And I literally turned my headlamp off and just ran behind him for a big
Yeah.
portion. And so after that run, I actually, my girlfriend actually got me a
Kogala.
Kogalla for as a present. So
Nice.
that's what I've been using since. So I definitely
Great.
discovered brighter light is very nice.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially as we get
I
older.
like the Yeah, I like the headlamp waist belt combo though, because if I use the waist belt alone, I feel like it jiggles too much, and so it kind of makes me a little motion sick.
Mhm.
So having like that steady beam from the headlamp kind of reduces that, and then also I could look side to side to be like, oh, what's gonna come attack me from over there? As things pop in your head. And if I just had the waist belt, I wouldn't be able to like direct my beam to the side trail.
Right. Right. Absolutely. So, Nick, we've already heard that you have a Kogala. Is there
Yeah,
anything
so
else
I'm
that you?
listen. I'm just scared of the dark. I mean,
That's
there you
fair.
go.
That's
Okay,
fair. Yeah.
you go out in the middle of the night. It's terrifying because you very quickly get consumed by the blackness out there. Like, and you turn around and there's nothing there. I mean,
Mm.
it's pretty dark. But by the time I was done with this challenge, yeah. So yes, I used the Kogalla and I really like it. But I actually, and I was doing a lot of my runs in the summer just with my schedule. I gotta say, I feel like I prefer night running now as opposed to running during the day. And I really did never thought ever I would ever say this, but you don't run into people. You don't run into any wildlife at night. They see that Kogalla from 6 miles away and they know you're coming before you have any chance of accidentally running into something. And so I just found night running to be way more peaceful. It was quiet. There was nothing out there to bother you. And I never thought I would ever say this, but like a night run is just enjoyable. It just really is.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree.
Right on. Very good. Cool. Do you use anything in combination with the Kogala or just the Kogala?
I do have a backup. I have a Petzl headlamp, and then I also carry one handheld just in the back, just in case a battery malfunctions and something goes bad. So I do have a backup, but thankfully I never had to use it.
Right on. How about you, Josh? Any backups?
Yeah, so I've totally switched to just using the big, waist light, the Kogalla all the time, and my Petzl is now my backup. Um, just to add on the Kogalla thing, they have different battery sizes you can get with that. I got the biggest battery you can have, which I actually really like because now on the long runs, I can take my watch off and I can plug it into the Kogalla while I'm using it as the source for my light. It's also charging my watch.
Yep.
And so it's kind of nice having that backup, that kind of power source backup as well with you.
Absolutely. Nick, do you carry anything else as a backup battery or just the Kogalla battery itself?
So Kogalla's not going to like me saying this, but their batteries are horrible. I've had two Kogalla batteries just take a complete crap on me in the middle of a run. So I'll never use Kogalla batteries ever again. So I went on Amazon and got a couple of those,
Battery
$10
banks?
specials.
Yeah.
And they work great. And I do carry a backup battery because I've been out there and I've had that battery fail on me. And that's a lot of weight to be carrying around if it doesn't work.
Right. Yeah. Sarah, how about you? Backup light and backup battery?
I carry backup batteries. So they all take those big tube batteries,
Mm-hmm.
both my waist belt and my headlamp. So I just
Okay.
got like 4 extras. I just throw in my pack.
And do you carry anything to charge phone or anything like that?
I did for Massanutten, just because I was completely by myself and um, in a completely different state from anybody that I knew. So just wanted to be able to call somebody in case
Yeah.
anything happened. But I don't think I did. I don't think I carried a charger on anything else. I had my phone with me.
Yeah.
Foothills was the only time that I burned my phone out from taking all the waterfall photos. It was dead before I even got halfway through the run. I
Yeah.
was like, but there's more views.
Here's the dad in me. So, Sarah, I'm gonna reprimand you. If
Yeah.
you are going to be reliant on your phone, please make sure you have a way to charge it.
Yeah.
I
Well, I
always want
had Celia with me at Foothills, so she was
all right.
meeting me every bit, but
Just in case though, it's always good to have something, especially if you're relying on it for your mapping services, right? Like if you're pulling your
yeah.
phone up a lot and using the battery, it's always good to have that fail safe where you can, charge it and don't forget your cords.
Yeah.
um, um, very good. Okay. Um, so, something that I encountered, and I talked about this with my friend, we did the Grand Slam this summer, was like the finances that go behind this. A lot of times people don't think about, like, there's a lot that goes into this when you're traveling, right? You're having to spend money to go to these different places. Did you all find it to be a lot extra or minimal? Like, thank goodness we're all in the South and these are kind of accessible to us. But what did that, and you don't have to get into details of how much it cost, but did you find it to be an extra expense? Was it expensive? Thankfully, you don't have to pay race entry, so that's one perk. But yeah, why don't you guys, Nick, why don't we start with you?
Well, I was just gonna say, if you look at a standard just going to a trail race, it's kind of ridiculous. I mean, it is. I've got a lot of friends that are race directors, and I love them. And I'm not going to stop doing this. My wife's doing Rim to River next weekend, and we're looking forward to that. And it's going to be I'm just looking forward to it. But from a financial perspective, I mean, this is kind of like Sarah was saying earlier. This is like sleep in your car. This is like awesome. This is great way to go and see some trails because you're car camping, you're making it work wherever you can. You jump on the trails, you go as far as you can, and then I think when I think a couple of the trails I got a hotel, right, but nothing crazy. So I financially, I other than just the gear, which you got to have anyway. I thought it was a great way to go trail running.
So,
It's kind of the way to go.
so far as gear goes, did you find that most of your gear transitioned well through the 5 courses, or did you find you needed specific, for example, footwear? Like, were the shoes that you usually use good for all 5 courses? We all know, Josh, what you did, but
I mean, it translates like I guess you could almost call this is like trail running, almost fast packing. Like
Mhm.
it transitions really well. I mean, a lot of the gear that I use for trail running is the same. Like I did get a Solomon 12-liter pack so I could stuff more stuff in there, but I ended up stuffing stuff in there I really didn't need anyway. So I probably didn't even need that. So I'll let the rest comment.
Well,
I didn't
just
need
to,
anything.
I think it'd be helpful to expound upon what you just said. What was some of the needless things that you found that you carried that you really didn't need to?
I think when I first started this, I thought I wasn't going to have as much support as I was able to find, which was I was really grateful for that. So I had planned on carrying like all my food and all my water, and then I had hydration. I had hydration backups, and then I had water bottles that I didn't use. I had a medical kit. I had a crash kit. I had just a lot of stuff when you do anything for the first time, and then you realize what you kind of need, and it kind of you quickly realize you can go pretty far on a certain pack of food and calories.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, cool. Very good. Thank you. Josh, how about you? What did you find so far as were you similar to Nick that you were able to car camp and kind of make this minimal, if you will, in that regard, so far as your spending goes?
Yeah, pretty minimal. I mean, but 4 of these runs are all pretty far down here in the South, pretty,
Right.
but within 3 hours driving from Atlanta. Massanutten being the furthest away. Like Nick, there was a couple times that I got a hotel just like for the first night, uh, prepping to go up there. I guess probably the biggest expense was actually Georgia Loop, because when I did Georgia Loop, I kind of made it into a party and I invited a bunch of people. And so I got an Airbnb and I was like, hey, we're going to hang out and then we're going to go run Georgia Loop and then we're going to hang out some more and watch Cocaine Bear. And so, so I mean, you
I
can.
thought you said do cocaine and beer.
No, I mean,
That's quite the party.
yeah, it was like, no, just watching the movie.
So Josh, how do you do brutes? Nice.
Plenty of help. But yeah, I mean, I think it really speaks to the fact that you can make this a minimal kind of effort financially, or you can make it whatever you want. I mean, when I did Georgia Loop, 5 other runners came out there with me and they all dropped off along the way and only one other guy finished with me. So it was, it was a fun, just kind of like running party, really. But then the other runs were more like either just on my own or me and Nick and Ted or me and Nick. And, we're just getting it done and, grab a hotel the night before. Massanutten, I car camped. I drove up there the night before and I just slept in my truck at the start finish and got up and did it. So yeah, I mean, as far as right. And then gear wise, I think that was the other part of the question, right?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, gear wise, really for me, the only thing different was what I was going to wear. Like those early on races, I knew at night and early morning it was going to be like down in the teens. So, wear a pair of socks so I don't get frostbite. And, some extra layers with me kind of thing. But I'm a ultralight backpacker. And so that translates in my trail running. Like my first aid kit is Neosporin and Sports Tape. So yeah, is actually, as far as what was in my pack for all the runs was the same. Really the difference in gear was just the extra layers I needed for when it was going to be cold.
Right on. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
How about you, Sarah? What did you find?
Yeah, same. I mean, one of the reasons that really drew me to this challenge was financially. Just like all the races are getting more expensive. I mean, just they have to cover their costs, which I understand, but it doesn't make it more affordable for the rest of us. So yeah, just not having to have a race fee is one of the main reasons that I really wanted to take this on, just to stick with adventures. I mean, I got Airbnbs for 3 of them just because for my crew. I felt if I was gonna drag them out for a weekend to have to come follow me around, that I'd give them somewhere to stay. But we could have easily just camped. But I mean, even the Airbnbs, like a lot of these places are really remote. So even the Airbnbs are really cheap and affordable for really nice places too. In terms of gear, I had the same stuff for everything, except I screwed up on Pitchell and didn't bring my raincoat. And if I didn't have Austin with me, and if he didn't have an extra poncho in his bag, I probably would have gotten hypothermia and had to drop. Because it started raining as soon as we got to the base of Mitchell, and it was dark and pouring rain and the wind. So yeah, I screwed up there, but he saved my life with a poncho, and I was able to finish. But yeah, everything was the same for all of them. Because even in the summer, like when I think it rained in pretty much all of my runs, except for foothills. But all of them, as soon as you get dark, and I get cold when I'm really tired, so it could be the middle of summer if it's dark and the temperature drops a little bit and I've been sweating all day. I know that I'm going to need some sort of coat just to keep the heat in.
Yeah. Nick.
So I guess I kind of have a question for the three of you. Like, Cera and Josh doing this now, and now you sign up for a regular trail race. Like you go back to a fully supported 5-course meal, aid stations. Do you find yourselves packing like a lot of this stuff from the B.R.U.T.E.S challenges where you don't even stop at the aid stations anymore, and you just kind of like you're self-supporting yourself now beyond just B.R.U.T.E.S, but at actual races too? And I asked that to Aaron too, because like from an aid station perspective, how much do you guys now rely on the aid stations?
So I'm probably not I'm a little bit different in the fact that I've never really eaten a lot of the aid station food, just like dietary preferences, I guess. And so I usually always rely on my own drop bags or just carrying the food with me regardless. Usually like potato chips are a bonus at the aid stations. Like I'll grab potato chips, or if they have the oranges. But that's usually what I get out of aid stations. Water refills.
Yeah, water refills. Yeah, Nick, I don't yeah, I don't I've always carry like backup food in my pack just in case like I need something between aid stations anyway. Not a lot, but I still like stopping at the aid stations. Like every race I've ran this year, there's aid stations that have interesting things. From the aid station that had chocolate covered marshmallows with pretzel sticks in them, and I was like, I gotta have some of that, to the aid stations that had the salty water boiled hot dogs. I was like, definitely need some of those. I guess I kind of love seeing what's at the aid stations and what looks appealing at that point in my race. So I always eat something there. And you'll attest to, Nick, of course, I'm a Coca-Cola addict, and I have to load up on at least a liter or two of Coca-Cola at every aid station too.
I've just found that I can't rely on aid stations to have exactly what they say they're going to have. So I learned that pretty early on. So I carry as much as I'm going to need, and then it's just a bonus if they have something at the aid station. So yeah, I'd rather have than, say like I get there and I'm totally surprised by the fact that they don't. I'm like, oh my gosh. Yeah. So yeah, I'm a little bit more self-reliant. And yourself, Nick?
I think that's like the take there is like this exercise and this experience, it does help you become self-reliant. At least for me, it did. It helped me kind of realize as much as I think I do. And if you've got your food and like you said, it's just a bonus to get there and there's something there. So
yeah, absolutely. Everybody okay on time? Yeah. Okay. So with that said, you've all mentioned that you've had help. In what forms did that come? And you've mentioned that thank God was X, Y, and Z. There's groups like the Virginia Happy Runners, that you can reach out to and such. But what were some resources that you used, and talk about the help that you had? May need a second to think on it, but does anybody want to go first?
Yeah, I can start.
Okay. Thanks, Josh.
So, yeah, from the very beginning, before when I did Georgia Loop and didn't even know there was such a thing as B.R.U.T.E.S Challenge, even starting there, I was like, man, I'm going to go do this thing. I know when it's going to go into the night. Let me just see if my girlfriend would happen to want to drive around and follow me. So I could have some Coke along the way. And she's like, yeah, no, that sounds cool. And it was a lot of fun. So she graciously has been my support on all these runs. Or most
we're talking soda though, right?
Yeah. Yes. Right. Yeah. Soda. I discovered over the course of the past year and a half that I really respond well to pierogies and pizza bites.
All right.
On a run. So those are warm and hot in the truck waiting for me when I come in. So yeah, I mean, to me, I think that really made these runs possible for me, having that support. And she has since learned that not everybody gets support like that. And now she tells me I'm the most spoiled trail runner in the country, which is probably true. But I will say, I mean, even with the support, like SCAR, you have one chance for support at SCAR, really, at Newfound Gap, and sometimes not even then, right? So in the course of doing these runs, you do get the opportunity to really have the true unsupported running experience, for sure. And even to some degree foothills, because you have that 32-mile section in Laurel Valley where nobody can really get to you.
Right on.
So that was my support story. Just
Sweet.
having her out there with warm food and Coca-Cola.
Way to expound upon that. Coca-Cola. Sarah, Nick, who wants to chime in?
Yeah, I mean, I did 2 of these completely self-supported, or I guess unsupported is the proper term, where I just carried everything with me. And then the other 3, Georgia Loop, I just had my husband and his mom came and met us at, I think it was like 32 miles in, is the 60 crossing. And my go-to is the Lotus ramen soup is by far the most wonderful thing on the trail ever, and always like completely revives me. So had them waiting for that at mile 32. And then same with foothills. I'm usually good with going at least like a 50K by myself, just carrying everything. So Celia was waiting for me also with a cup of soup. And same at Pitchell. Austin saved my life with soup and then that poncho at the end. But yeah, I like to try to do these pretty much as minimal as possible. Like I'm really grateful. Like some of these I definitely couldn't, I don't think I would have finished without my crew. Or at least it would have been a lot longer and horrible experience for me. But yeah, I like to try to go as far as I can, just kind of on my own.
Right on. And Nick?
Well, I gotta certainly thank my wife for putting up with me, because on one hand she's got to drive out there and support me, and then she's got to deal with my emotional like 6-year-old tantrums out there where something's not going right, and I'm just I'm throwing stuff around, and so absolutely am very lucky to have her because she helped me a lot. And it's really hard for me. I am not the type of person that likes to ask for help. And it's even hard to even talk about it a little bit. It's hard. Mm-hmm. And this challenge is tough. And I think it is a good indicator of how hard this challenge is when you got to ask for help. I did a couple of them unsupported, and I realized pretty quickly on it was going to be really hard to do this completely unsupported without some help. And I was lucky enough to sync up with Josh and Ted, who did a couple of them with me, and I ended up friending a couple of folks at Massive Newton, Fitz Brown, that ended up helping me get through it. And then I had gotten through the first foothills with Hunter Hughes, who was able to run with me and just kind of keep me motivated. So I really don't think I would have been able to finish it without those individuals, for sure. Like I want to say I could, but I don't think I could. I really don't.
Right on. Cool.
Aaron, yes. One more thing that Nick just kind of touched on that did actually help me a lot too was if you can have other people to run with, just sharing that experience with somebody. That's it makes it even more fun doing this challenge. Like I think the most fun I had on the runs was when I was with Nick and Ted. My absolute favorite like picture that I took on the trail is a picture of me, Nick, and Ted at Charles Bunyan on Scar. It was just, we were just having a great time that whole run, and it just made the miles fly by.
Nice. That's cool.
And of course, yeah, I mentioned my girlfriend a lot, but Nick and his wife Amanda were out there for me too as well on foothills, which was great.
Awesome. Cera touched upon a mistake that almost cost her in not having her rain jacket. Any other mistakes that you guys made that might be something that other folks should take into consideration?
Well, I'll just toss it. It's right in the same vein as Cera. Before I actually started B.R.U.T.E.S, I went out to run Georgia Loop just as a training run the year before. And it was, I think, early October. It was like 75 degrees when the day started. And by, I was 10 miles from the end and it was like 1 a.m. And I was so cold. I just couldn't keep going. And I hadn't brought anything. All I was wearing was my shorts and my short sleeve t-shirt. And that's all. I was like, I'm just going to do this. And I didn't even consider what the weather was going to be. So that was when like the first realization, I was like, oh, you have to actually like plan this stuff and think about what's going to be happening while you're out there if you're going to actually do these things. So
right.
Yeah, just looking ahead, knowing what the weather is going to be, having an idea of what your timelines are. And so like understand where you're going to be in the run at what times and what that might mean as far as gear you need.
Perfect. Great. Anything, Nick?
I mean, the cold weather is real. Heat exhaustion and cold weather is they're real. And if you don't respect it, you're going to find yourself on the other end of a very long, hard day. And I didn't necessarily learn that at B.R.U.T.E.S. I learned that in trail running in general. But I mean, you can get hypothermia when it's in the 40s. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have to be 19 degrees outside to get dangerously cold. And it doesn't need to be 112 degrees to get heat exhaustion. You got to be careful, and you got to learn to listen to your body and figure out when to push it and when not to push it, and know that how the training goes into that in between, so you can be prepared for it. So yeah, just cold and hot weather is real.
Right on. Any other thing you have, Cera?
Yeah, that pretty much covers it. It's just, I mean, Pitchell, I didn't even look at the weather until we were going out there, and I was like, oh, it's supposed to rain later. I'm like, well, guess that'll happen. And still didn't even grab my raincoat or anything. I don't even know I don't think I even brought it with me. I didn't like it. Pitchell was total last minute for me. I was supposed to run Massanutten the week before and just switched it around. I'm like, I don't even know where I'm going. We're just doing this. So that's also what I like about this challenge is like, I mean, you can get as into the data as you want, but you can also just be like, all right, let's just do this and whatever happens, happens. And it's just makes for a fun adventure. But yes, being safe, always bring a raincoat, something warm.
Good message there for sure. We had a few questions here. Nick came up with some good ones. And you guys have all kind of mentioned somebody that you're thankful for. So we mentioned who you're thankful to. What are you thankful for having done this?
The adventure.
Health. Yeah.
Adventure. Nick, adventure. Yeah. Josh?
Really getting out and seeing some new trails. Like Foothills Trail had been on my bucket list for a while, and I'd never really thought about when am I going to get to go do it. I was like, oh, this is awesome. Like kind of forcing me to do it. So yeah, definitely thankful that these trails are out there, and man, that people are maintaining them for sure. I I went out and made a donation to all the trail associations last week on this stuff. It's like,
Yeah.
this is just incredible what they're doing.
Which is a good moment to just reflect and say that there are a lot of organizations that help maintain these trails, and they're volunteer based. I've got my own section as Mountains to See. You guys, when you started coming down Pitchell and got into the Pisgah parking lot, as soon as you went up those stairs, that was my section. So you got to see some of my handiwork. And the club does a lot on that section because there's just so much, on Pitchell. That's a lot of trail, right? Point to point. Same with foothills, Scar on the AT, so there's just a lot that goes into these trails. So if I could say anything to anyone listening, is that the trails always need help. So reach out to your local organization and find out how you can help. There are work days, there are sections that need coverage. So, reach out to those organizations. And I'll try to put those in the show notes as well. But yeah, thank you for mentioning that. Just making my note. All right. Sarah also had a great question from her friend come in and said, what was recovery like for you guys? Talk about, like, not only what was it like, but how much recovery did you have in between each effort? You have a 365-day time limit, so it gives you, we're talking about 5 courses here, so you do the math of how many days you can typically have in between. But what did that look like for you guys? Sarah, since this question came in from you, why don't you talk about that first?
Yeah. So I would say what I learned from this is that I can do like 2 months back to back, but if I try a third month, that's when I really it's too much for me, just where I am in life right now. Like, I did foothills in February, I did GDR in March, and then going into SCAR in April. I was struggling at SCAR, just mental. It was a lot of mental too. Just I'm like, why am I back out here doing this long run again? And SCAR was also my first completely unsupported adventure I'd ever done, so it was a lot to take on. And I think if I hadn't just done 3, like that being my third, like back to back long adventure, I think I probably needed a little bit more time. And then I took the summer off and then attacked Pitchell in September and Massanutten in October, and there was like a month in between the two, and I think that was like a good enough recovery and enough time to kind of like build back up into it. But yeah, being done with Massanutten, I'm like, all right, I'm good for a little bit. I don't have anything till December. So
Josh, how about yourself?
I was just looking at the dates I did these things because what I would have said, and it seems optimal for me, having around 6 weeks between these types of runs. But at the beginning of the year, actually, when I did Georgia Loop and Pitchell, those were training runs in prep for Cruel Jewel 100 that I was doing. Mm-hmm. And so I actually did those pretty close together, a month apart. So because I did Georgia Loop, March, Pitchell in April, and then of course I did Cruel Jewel in May. And then had June off and did SCAR in July, and then kind of started the 6-week cycle after that. So that worked well for me. I'm sure that has a lot to do with the base that I had built over the previous year and a half training up for Cruel Jewel. So I'm sure your mileage will vary as far as taking 6 weeks off between runs like that.
How did you feel going into Cruel Jewel though? Because that was pretty close to when you did Pitchell. Because you did Pitchell at the end of April, and then Cruel Jewel wasn't that May? Yeah, so it was only a couple weeks later.
It was about 4 weeks later. Yeah. I feel good. I mean, Cruel Jewel is tough.
Yeah.
I didn't have like a stellar time or anything, but I felt good most of that race. And like the last 25 miles of that race, I was on fire. So yeah, I felt good. Probably trying to think. It seemed like there was one of these runs where I kind of felt like, do I really want to do this? But once I got, once you get into it, it's like, yeah, this is awesome. Might have
Yeah.
been it might have been the last foothills actually. I was just like, anyway,
Yeah, I think knowing that it's your final one, that you're just kind of like, all right, let's just get this over with.
right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, oh, and actually, yeah. So I did, yeah, and I did Massanutten on Labor Day weekend, and then the next weekend I ran 250Ks back to back in Colorado.
Whew.
On Sunday. Well, Saturday, well, day off. Saturday, took Sunday off, and then went on Monday. So, and I don't know. It all felt good. I think it's about your base.
And for yourself, Nick?
I'm not qualified to answer this. I mean, look at Josh, man. He goes out there, he runs Cruel Jewel, he's running Colorado, he's doing these things. Like, I'm not even qualified to like answer this. I mean, I got lucky and finished, and I'm happy about it. I mean, from a recovery standpoint, I agree. I mean, if you've got the base and you're running, 45, 50 miles a week, and that's just your training and that's what you're used to. I mean, these are probably just hard weekends for you. They're really hard weekends for you if you've got the training base. If you go out there, you haven't been running for a while, it's going to hurt. It's going to take a long time to recover. So I think it's all about your training load. And I mean, like I said, I'm not really qualified. I think, Cera and Josh are like way beyond me in terms of like the mileage that they're putting in. So,
well, it just for those that do this sort of activity, it's really what you do the days after, that really makes the difference of how you're going to recover moving forward. So make sure you're taking those days right after you finish seriously, and making sure that you're not doing too much, that your nutrition's on point, your hydration's on point, your sleep is on point, because that's what's going to lead forward and to give you good recovery, is that first week. And that's what I found during the Grand Slam, is that first week after the 100-miler. I mean, 400s in 4 months, it's a lot on the body. And if I took care of myself, I recovered extremely well.
Nice.
It's like, but if you do stupid stuff in between, if life happens, which it did during the Grand Slam, but you notice it, right? So it's just being careful and taking care of yourself, and just giving yourself that time in between that you need, and not forcing it. So it's definitely a good conversation to have with your friends. If you have a coach, talk to the coach about it, but put the idea past them, because you may think it's a good idea in your head, but somebody else may be like, I don't know if that's the greatest idea. And they might put that little bit of doubt in your head that starts you thinking otherwise. And that might be a good thing. So, but yeah, thank you guys for sharing all that. Very good. Is there anything that you guys have on the list of questions that we didn't touch on that you would like to touch on?
I have to ask, what did y'all use for water filters? Because that seemed to be, for me, like the difference between 10 minutes and freaking an hour, depending on how your water filter worked.
I do the Katadyn Be Free, but
Okay.
I just make sure that it can be really long if you don't pre-wet it. So I made that mistake. Luckily, I thought about it right before I started the run, and so I put some of the water from my bladder into the filter, and then just had it upside down so that it would like pre-soak the filter.
Okay.
But yeah, I always make sure that I fill it up the night before, just to get the filter wet, because if you get to a stream and that thing's dry, you're not filtering water for at least 20 minutes. So
Yeah, I had the Sire squeeze, and I just put it in line with my bladder to my drinking tube. So I have a bladder I have just for dirty water. So I just straight into the creek with that bladder, fill it up, and can go straight back to running.
interesting. I'll have to look into that.
Yeah, I ended up doing the B.Free as well, the Catenin B.Free, and then I had that problem with the filter. So then I
Yeah.
switched to the Hydropacks version of the B.Free, and um, I just have both of them now, just because I ran into that issue with the B.Free, and I ended up like just beating the heck out of it with like a rock outside of the truck trying to get it to run water through it. So I wish I would have known that trick.
Yeah, as long as you just pre-soak it like with some fresh water before. Or I mean even if any sort of water. You just get it wet
Wish
beforehand.
wish wish I would have known that on run number 2. So thanks, Sarah.
Fantastic. Anything else you guys want to touch on?
Aaron, I'd love to hear what people have planned for next year.
Sure. Yeah. Nick, you want to start us off?
I am, first of all, right now I'm taking a little bit of a break. I'm a race director for a local race down here. That's my way of giving back. Josh talked about like trail maintenance and doing work for the trails, and so I'm a big believer in that too. So being able to give that back is really important to me. So I'm focused on that right now. And then
Which race is that?
it's the Pine Mountain Trail Race down in Pine Mountain, Georgia.
Cool.
So we're working on that right now. Kind of putting all my passion into that. And then next year, I've got enough tickets for Western States. We're gonna see what happens in December. That's gonna
Fingers
have
crossed
a
for you,
huge
man.
impact on how I think it's gonna have a huge impact on how I train, I'm sure. I'm signed up for Rim to River next year. Really looking forward to going up there and doing that race. And then a lot of my planning for next year is just around speed, trying to get that kind of dialed in a little bit, maybe see if I can get a little bit of that back. So
For you. Cool.
kind of a recovery year, I think, for me. So we'll see how it goes.
Miss Sarah?
I'm gonna do Cruel Jewel 100 in
Nice.
May. And then kind of debating, I was debating on Pinhoti in November or just trying to, I've wanted to do the Bartram Trail for years now. It's 118 miles. And so I may just do that instead of an official race. So we'll see.
I like it.
Yeah, the
Just talk your
Bartram Loop up in North Carolina is a cool little weekend run to do. It's like 54, 55 miles. Bartram Trail hooks up the AT to make a loop.
Yeah, so Bartram starts in South Carolina, like the border, and then goes up through North Carolina, and I forget, I'm blanking on the mountain. Starts with a P that it ends at. But yeah, it would be that section too.
I think we all blanked. Yeah. How about you, Josh?
It ends where it ends.
Well, my plans are kind of up in the air, but since I did Cruel Jewel 100, I have been informed that I must apply to like every lottery possible now. So Hard Rock's on the radar. Don't know if I'll get in. Probably won't get in. Ultra Grand Slam is also a bucket list item that I really want to do. And I'll start trying to do that this year. We'll see how that works out. And something that's probably actually doable that I'll get to do this year is Rim to Rim to Rim, which I'd never done before.
Very cool.
I'm planning that for 2025.
Okay, here you go.
Right on.
And also I'm running Pine Mountain. Figured I'd throw that in there.
Yay.
The party.
See you guys in December.
Awesome. Sarah, what's the best way for people to connect with you?
Man, I guess I use Facebook only for updates from you and other races. So Facebook isn't always the best way, but I guess I do get the messages. Yeah, Facebook or Instagram.
Okay. I have those, so I'll put those in the show notes. Josh?
Yeah, probably Instagram is probably the best way. My handle is at Nunez Josh.
And no dot, just Nunez, Josh.
I believe that's correct.
I'll double check it and put it in the show notes.
Know what my handle is.
And Nick, I can look up yours too. Is it?
Please, if you don't mind. I don't even know what it is. I'm on
Is-
Facebook and Instagram. I don't know too many Schusters, though, so that's
And which way is the best? Is it Facebook, Instagram, or both?
both is fine.
Okay. All right. I will put all of that in the show notes. I will double check everybody's and get that on there. Very
Thank you
cool.
for having us on. Like, this was
Absolutely
awesome. I mean, I really struggled with this one. So it's kind of therapy a little bit getting through this and getting to talk to some other folks that have done this. And I'd love to hear if anyone else does it or if anyone else has done it in the past. I'd love to hear those stories because I just
Well,
I think it's awesome what you're doing. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, Cera connected all of us. It was her idea to have all of us together. So, Cera, thank you for connecting all of us. Natalie Daniels, I did 2 episodes with Natalie. One was after she had finished either 2 or 3 of the B.R.U.T.E.S challenge runs, and then the second episode is with Charles, the creator of the B.R.U.T.E.S challenge, and Natalie after she had finished it off. So I'll put those in the show notes. So if you want to hear the Natalie story, that's there. But thank you and congratulations to all of you. Really cool challenge to accomplish. So, and thanks for sharing your stories. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Aaron.
Thanks for having us on.
Well, thank you, Cera, Josh, and Nick for coming on and talking about your experience with the B.R.U.T.E.S challenge. And congratulations once again for finishing such a challenge. As I said, I have one more athlete in process that's trying to complete the B.R.U.T.E.S challenge. He should finish it next March, I believe, March or April. He should be done with it. So if all goes well, obviously anything can happen with that, as I kind of talked about with my experience with the B.R.U.T.E.S challenge. It's not to say that I won't make another attempt to do it. I really want to do this challenge. They're all loops that I would love to complete, and I think it's a cool way to do it. So thank you guys for the inspiration. It's really cool. So appreciate it once again, and congrats once again. Here in the world of running is life, man, winter track, as I record this, November 1st, is starting up. So, a quick, brief little break between the cross-country season and indoor track. And I'm excited to see these guys. It's been since spring track since I've seen many of them. So really excited to get back and see some of these high schoolers and get back to coaching indoor track. And other than that, I'll be volunteering at Shut-In this weekend. So if you're running Shut-In, that's November 4th. Hopefully I'll see you out there. I'll be at the Stony Ridge aid station, the pull-off on the Blue Ridge Parkway. So hope to see you out there. If you see me, say hey. I'd love to say hi and, cheer you on your way. This year's Shut-In is a little bit long. The new finish line down at the the Wolf Ford campground. So, man, it's going to be a new challenge for the runners. Definitely a bit longer and a bit tougher coming down Technical Trail in Pilot Cove. So good luck to all those runners. Then the following weekend, I'm helping Natalie Daniel. She's doing her own self-made 200-miler. So Teresa Bowser and I, Teresa and Natalie are both former guests of the podcast, and 2 of my athletes will be closing it out with Natalie. So we're going to meet Natalie up at Pisgah and run her into the finish. We've got about 30-something odd miles with her. I'm going to pace from Pisgah to Black Balsam, and then Teresa's going to bring her home, and I will crew for the last portion. So excited for Natalie. And then the weekend after that, which would be the 18th, is the Looking Glass 100K. I've got a ton of athletes racing that as well. And I'll be volunteering up at the, I think it's the Buck Springs aid station up near Pisgah. It's about mile 42 in the race, crewing. And that's, I think you can pick up pacers there. So excited for that. Excited for that opportunity. So good bit of busyness here in November. Lots going on. Lots of races. Rim to Rivers this weekend coming up. I wish all the runners well. I've got a number of runners in that race as well. So really busy time Really enjoying seeing all these athletes doing all these amazing things. Congrats to Tony McDermott. Tony is one of my athletes. He just broke 24 hours at the Javelina, the 100-miler. And man, what a grit, just true grit to break 24 on that one. So super proud of Tony. Congratulations to him. Lots of cool stuff going on, man. Just so many cool people racing. Sherry McCoat, she is one of my athletes and just PR'd by a minute in the Marine Corps 50K. So just turning out some awesome results this fall. Really happy for everybody. New York coming up real quick too. New York City Marathon this weekend. Another race. I've got quite a few athletes running. So my best to all that are running the New York City Marathon. So man, just like I said, busy time of year, and I'm excited. I got Thanksgiving coming up as well. I'm going to do a turkey trot with my family. I promised my daughter I'd run with her. So, we're going to run a 5K. And so far as my training goes, I'm still in base mode and working zone 2, zone 3, trying to stay primarily zone 2, a little bit of zone 3. But, I went out and ran yesterday, and paces are coming down. I'm starting to see kind of that sub 9-minute high zone 2, which is, very encouraging, starting to get that aerobic base back. I noticed that if I'm running too hard, typically when I run with my wife, I'm running a little too hard and the heart rate gets a little too high. I noticed that it is not very sustainable. My heart rate does not want to recover even if I slow down very well. So just need to keep building that aerobic base and building up my mitochondria, and developing more capillaries to the muscles so that more oxygen can get to them. That's the primary function of the base training. And if you're not doing yourself that service of just going slow and easy in your base, you're missing out on some fitness that you could have later on, some potential to do better in your interval training. Really good conversation on Trail Runner Nation. My athletes and I are actually going to discuss that in our Zoom call this evening. But I will put that podcast episode in the show notes so you can listen and hear from Dr. Marco Casella about mitochondria and their importance and what they do. Kind of goes into more of a deep dive of what I'm talking about right now and why the base is so important as we finish up our goal races for the year. Good to take that break. As I said, I took a month off after Wasatch, took a complete month off and rest, and then just started building back slowly. You can see me on Strava, so you can follow along on Strava. I'm trying to post on Strava a little bit more in the description as to what I'm up to, what I'm doing. I started doing, I walk my dog every morning, but I've also added a weighted vest to that just to get a little bit more core strength and work on strength training. I continue to do strength training. You'll see that I've got 2 strength workouts a week. I'm doing a mobility routine, which Jesse Fuller, you can check out Jesse on Instagram. I'll put Jesse in the show notes. So I'm working on mobility. I'm working on strength. And I've added form drills back. And if you see these things on Strava and you want to know what the warm up is or what the drills look like, I can send you guys YouTube links. I probably could do that each day. It just takes a little more time, but happy to answer those questions. So if you see me post something and you've got a question, just leave a comment, ask, or direct message me. All my communications are in the show notes. Feel free to reach out. If you have questions about coaching, again, reach out. You can check out my website, runningslife.run. It kind of talks about my coaching, my style, what I do, how I do it. But happy to have a conversation with you and talk about coaching if you're interested as you look towards 2024. As this training builds up, my goal race is Hellbender 100 in May. Super excited for that. Just want to stay healthy. So that's why I'm focused on everything. It's really important right now for me just to create those habits, and kind of force the time. And kind of what I've recognized is that, I need to, get that done. And then, that being my warm-ups, my drills, my run, my lifting, get that done, and then get into my work for the day. That way it's not on my mind. You may have a different time of day it works out for you, but carve out that time. Recognize that it is that part of the day that's essential to you. Because we don't feel good when we miss something, I know it's tough, it's tough to carve out that time. I've typically just been waking up a little bit earlier just to, organize myself, answer emails, to record the podcast, etc. But I'm still focusing on my sleep, making sure that I'm getting enough sleep. I just go to bed, perhaps a little bit earlier. Could I do the converse? Could I stay up a little later? I could. I'm just not a night person. I know I function better in the morning. So again, just kind of think about who you are and what serves you best. But yeah, just carving that niche out of the day and recognizing it's kind of a big part of your day. You're probably a better person and a happier person after you get your workout in and get it done. And these active warm-ups and strength, they're important. If you have a day where it's like, I could do this 30-minute or 4-mile easy run. Yeah, that's a poor part of the training, but instead, if you could throw in a weight session, that might benefit you more depending on your goal and depending on what you're training for. So, again, it's a good conversation to have with a coach, with a training partner. Bounce these ideas off of people and see what they think. Okay. So anyway, that's what I got for today. Again, thanks to Sarah, Josh, and Nick for coming on. I really appreciate you guys in the conversation and the time. Again, we could probably continue that conversation at some point and hear more about the B.R.U.T.E.S challenge. You can go back and listen to Natalie and Charles' conversation as well. I'll post their conversations in the show notes. Show notes are going to be pretty packed. A lot of stuff to disseminate here. Coming up, I've got a podcast with Coach Faith Raymond, and Coach Faith Raymond is an amazing coach. She is just very, very smart, very intelligent, very science-based, and she talks to us about the female menstrual cycle and how that affects females and their training. And so it's not just a conversation for females, but if you're interested in coaching, definitely have a listen. Whether you're male or female, it's definitely something that can help all of us learn and be better coaches. So stay tuned for that conversation. I'm also recording next week with Paul Terranova. Paul is he's probably one of the guys that I look up to, just because at an older age he continues to just perform at a high level in ultras, and I'm just in awe of what he does. He just completed the Rocky Mountain Slam, which consisted of Hard Rock, Leadville, Wasatch, and the Bear. 4 incredibly hard races, and most of them at a higher altitude. Paul lives in Twin Lakes outside of Leadville, Colorado, with his wife Meredith Terranova, who was just on the podcast and talked about my goof ups in nutrition. So what an amazing couple. I'm excited to talk to Paul. I think Paul's awesome and incredible, and like I said, looking forward to that conversation as well. So some cool stuff coming up, some cool episodes. If you yourself have an idea or a question that you want to hear about on a podcast, reach out. Let me know. Happy to answer questions on the podcast or have you on the podcast to talk about things. So reach out. Happy to have those conversations. Lastly, thank you to my Patreon supporters. Patreon is just a wonderful way to help everybody that is doing podcasts that is on Patreon, help them keep doing what they're doing. You can do $1 a month, whatever you can afford. If this is valuable to you, the donation is greatly appreciated. It helps make this worth my time to do. That I can be sustainable. There are expenses that come along with this. So I really do appreciate my Patreon supporters. And if you can't support on Patreon, maybe just leave a review or share it with a friend. That helps as well, getting this podcast out there. So I thank you all for listening. I thank you for being a part of this, and being a part of the Running is Life, the family. And, until next time, just keep moving forward, my friends.